what is it doing and what are you missing when you do that. And in any case, the basic question you should be asking is, why was the gut damaged so that you lost the enzyme in the first place? Now, unfortunately, in bottle-fed babies, the most usual answer to that is either rotavirus gastroenteritis, because a virus can damage the gut and can cause the loss of the enzyme, which can lead to the lactose intolerance, the fermentation symptoms, or it's the cow's milk protein itself, if you're using a cow's milk formula, or it's a soy protein itself, if you're using a soy formula. So if they're what's causing the loss of the enzyme, they're what you need to deal with, because that enzyme should be there, should be getting lactose, should be digesting it so as to build a healthy brain. And the growth of the low lactose formulas was really a distraction technique by the companies. As it became obvious to parents that cow's milk protein intolerance was a major factor in formula-fed babies, the companies responded by taking out the lactose, knowing full well that that would reduce the obvious symptom of cow's milk protein intolerance, the gut stuff. That doesn't mean that the cow's milk protein wasn't still damaging the gut, wasn't still actually causing problems elsewhere in the baby's body. It just means that you didn't know that that was what was doing it, because the baby had got better, had lost some symptoms, hadn't lost its eczema, hadn't lost its cradle cap, hadn't lost its baby acne or whatever, but it had lost the gut symptoms, the green stools, the burnt bottom, the incessant crying. And that, of course, is a bit unfortunate, because it's actually bled over into the adult population. They think that lactose intolerance is just an intolerance of the sugar, which indeed it can be in many people, because most of the human race is not tolerant of lactose after about the age of 4 or 5. And they don't recognise that, in fact, they've got a protein intolerance or a protein allergy. Most of the people who go around saying, oh, look, I'm lactose free, I have to have low lactose milk or whatever, actually do have a milk protein problem that's showing itself in symptoms other than gut fermentation and windy stools and so on. So it was a great distraction strategy. It meant that people started saying, oh, well, it's lactose intolerance. Well, of course, there's lactose in breast milk. We'd better take the baby off the breast milk, hadn't we? And put it on a low lactose formula. That has been a marvellous marketing success, but it has done irreparable damage to many, many babies. You never take a breastfed baby off the breast because of lactose intolerance. You can breastfeed right through lactose intolerance, even severe lactose intolerance. And even if momentarily there should be a need for a rest, it can go straight back onto breast milk. And the good things in breast milk will mean it tolerates the lactose, no trouble at all. So lactose-free formula are not something that have any virtues that I can see, except the immediate one of relieving symptoms and confusing you as to what was really causing the symptoms. All babies that are born with the ability to tolerate lactose, except for a proportion who have the disease called galactosemia, and that is about maybe a whole fraction of 1% of the human population. And you'd know about that kind of lactose intolerance because after even a week of breastfeeding, the child would be failing to thrive and would be really, really in trouble because it causes major problems. No child can survive constantly being fed high lactose foods if they're absolutely missing the enzyme completely. But most enzyme deficiencies are relative rather than absolute. At the inborn error of metabolism is an absolute absence, and it's because it can't break down the galactose rather than the lactose itself, and that then accumulates and causes irreparable damage. That's not what's happening with your formula-fed baby who's lactose intolerant. Your formula-fed baby who's lactose intolerant has got something damaging its gut, and the two most common causes are cow's milk protein in the formula itself and a virus or a virus. And this is why, as I said, in relation to the breastfed child, at around 6 weeks when babies get rotavirus vaccinations, many of them will develop gut symptoms as a consequence of that vaccination. most of them will grow past that. It'll resolve itself because the body has the ability to heal. But in fact, for some, it sets ongoing allergy issues up in a way that I think is counterproductive for many babies. So don't be surprised if at 6 weeks there is an increase in diagnoses of lactose intolerance, because we're putting something into the gut which, if it's successfully put in, will actually cause a degree of loss of lactase, and so a reaction. Maybe with formula-fed babies, we should suggest that prior to their vaccination, that they do have, that they share amongst all of them one tin of lactose-free formula for the days that the rotavirus is going to be there. So, but of course, rotavirus is something that's spread in the community by poor hygiene, and mothers need to realise that they have to be really scrupulous when their baby has had the rotavirus vaccine, to wash hands after every nappy change with soap and water and thoroughly, and to not pass it on within the family or within the community. I'm sure that rotavirus is becoming more frequent, partly because parents get a bit casual about that sort of thing. I've seen whole families come down with rotavirus, and it's not pleasant in an adult any more than a child.
When a baby does react to formula, what is the best course of action?
You're starting on a very difficult path.
Just briefly.
If in fact a baby reacts to the formula and it's a cow's milk protein formula, then you need to get off the cow's milk protein formula, and you probably need to get straight onto, if you can, the extensively hydrolyzed ones. The HA formulas, the so-called hypoallergenics, were produced as a kind of intermediate step between full-on cow's milk formula and the extensively broken down formulas. In actual fact, the studies have shown that they are of no benefit to babies who are already reacting to cow's milk protein, and they're of no benefit in preventing it. So why they still exist on the market, given the studies, is another matter. They may, in fact, be something that parents find to be okay for babies from birth who don't have problems, but in real terms, none of the studies are showing major benefit to the child. So forget the HAs. The book which I talked about, and you'll have a photo of, Food Sensitive Babies by Joy Anderson, talks about where to go with cow's milk protein allergy, and she says, avoid the HAs, go straight to an extensively hydrolyzed formula. That's easier said than done. It's easier said if you're an advantaged, assertive, educated woman who has a good relationship with your doctor and who can convince them to write you a script for something. It's not so easy to do if you're not in that particular group, because the increase in prescribing has been such that the government makes it quite difficult for many people to get onto it, and that flows down. If doctors are doing an excessive amount of prescribing of it, because they recognise how common the problem is, they start to get little notices and inquiries from the Department of Health about this sort of issue. I've known people who've been sort of hauled over the coals, about doctors who've been hauled over the coals over their prescribing of these things, and it was simply that they were more aware than their colleagues of the issues and were prepared to do it. However, whether you can get onto it will depend. It will be, as I say, it's the start of a long and arduous path. Sometimes it's not necessary because you're getting to the stage where the child can start to eat other foods, and so the amount of formula that the baby is getting is actually cutting back. It depends on the age of the baby, when it's recognised, what you have to do. And in a talk like this, I can't really sort of go into great detail, but where they still need to be formula fed, which is under 4 months, obviously, if you can get them onto an extensive hydrolyzed, you'll expect symptoms to drop. The trouble is, the extensively hydrolyzed taste appalling, and the babies are often very difficult to get onto them. So that And the one Allopro that's available over the counter actually contains lactose. So that, again, you're back to square one. The prescription ones are the only ones that have a chance of really ending it. Trying to get the child onto a good mixed diet may in fact prove to be the best way to go. The interesting thing is that the in countries where they can't afford the kind of prices that the companies charge for the extensively hydrolyzed, there are alternative formulas for babies made from things like chicken and rice and a whole variety of things. Many of these bear quite a close relationship to the traditional weaning foods of communities where babies were actually moving on to other foods. And if you look up comminuted chicken diet, you find that it's basically chicken rice porridge with a few additives and some, sort of ways of dealing with it. I suspect that we will get to the point where enough babies are now reacting to the extensively hydrolyzed that we have to come to using completely different foods for those babies, and they won't necessarily be milks that we're using. We'll be getting a protein source, a fat source, carbohydrates, and putting them together along with vitamins and minerals in different ways altogether that exclude mammalian milk, because a lot of the children that have problems with cow's milk will also have problems with goat's milk, and a huge proportion of them have problems with soy milk. There's talk now about pea protein being introduced into infant formula. The industry is always one step ahead in terms of they know about these problems long before parents and health professionals know about them. And so they're already looking for donkey milk and pea protein and camel milk and you name it. There's discussions about what can we do that is different that might be available for babies that have problems with cow's milk. So what can you do? Do your best, and it's not going to be easy. And join a group that has been through it, like that Breastfeeding Mums of Babies with Food Allergies and Intolerances on Facebook, because you're going to need the support of people who have had the sorts of problems. Fundamentally, if you can keep breastfeeding through it, if you're a formula feeding mum who is also still breastfeeding, keep on breastfeeding as well, because it's one source that there will be possibilities of increasing or reviving in some way. And for many babies who've been through the extensively hydrolyzed things and reacted, they end up going back to the breast and the mother having to be on a restricted diet. As a first option, it's no great fun for the mother, but the alternative is worse, so they do it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you with the support. It's definitely helpful to have support going through all this process if you suspect that your baby's reacting to milk, whether it's formula or breast milk. It's invaluable.
It's invaluable. You really need it because you worry too much about something. Just yesterday I had an hour's chat with someone and she was thinking about what other things she would have to take out of her diet, when basically I said, look, it seems to me that the symptoms aren't bad enough to warrant going on a full elimination diet and all of the other things that might be involved in that. You would in fact be better to look at why are you not able to cope with this as it is, and let's see what supports could make this easier for you to deal with while you continue to breastfeed and allow the baby to develop tolerance through that process. And I think, that was something that was useful in terms of sometimes we worry too much about small things, not realizing the big variety of behaviours and stools that can happen. When breastfed babies are normal and healthy, they'll still throw green stools occasionally, and they'll still have mucus in their stools, and they'll still have different things that happen off and on. And you don't know whether that was because a virus came along at that time or whether it was something in your diet or what it was. But if you keep on breastfeeding, it usually resolves itself. And that's the issue, that it's very hard to do without the support of a group that says, yes, that is worth the effort involved. Yep. Formula feeding, you may or may not have that option, but if you do have it, and lots of women are combining the two, then hang on to it, because even if sometimes on the trials of extensively hydrolyzed, they ask the mothers to stop breastfeeding so as to see how the formula goes.